Hey YouTube, how's it going? My name's Viper, and this is the 5th devlog in a series I'm making for my new action roguelike, The Pit. It's been a while since I've posted. I've had a lot going on in my personal life, but I'm looking forward to jumping back into production of the game, and really focusing hard on pushing it to a good enough state to release, at least in early access. So last month, I made a demo for the game. If you haven't gotten a chance to play it, I'd say give it a little bit before playing it, because this video is mainly going to be a retrospective from my development of the demo to talk about what I found from the demo and how I'll be moving forward. My goal here is letting people know how conscious I am of the issues the game currently has, so you can have confidence that I'll address these issues going forward. So in this devlog, will be more of a long-form commentary discussion with gameplay of the demo in the background. So I noticed a lot of issues with the demo, and to no surprise of my own, but probably of yours. And I made a note to fix all the game-breaking ones that I could find, as soon as possible. Initially, I was getting into a weird state where after you died, the health bar would disappear and not reappear. I think that's a bug that can still happen, but in general, I've tried to get away from it. So this first section of this video will be Bakaria, the light sniper. And generally I'll just be jumping around, trying to clear through as much as I can, trying to take the most sensible upgrade paths, but I'll try to point out any issues as I see them. So these leapers, they do have the ragdoll, but even when they're not ragdolling, you can see that they glitch out a little bit on their movement. So that's something I'm conscious of and would like to fix. There's a few others, mainly related to animations, and, as you saw with that, certain attacks not playing properly, the character showing as if they're in the air when they're actually on the ground, and some enemies sort of glitch out. And I really want to fix those, because they just generally don't look good. But in terms of environment, I think this is probably one of the better stages I've made. It, all the little, stuff it generates, like the spikes and the rocks and all that around, I think really help pull the stage together. And so I'd like to make sure every stage is to this level and beyond. That's something I'm definitely also going to work on before the game gets for release. Making sure each stage has not only, it's not just a stage, but there's stuff you can do around the stage as well. I would love to do more with environmental storytelling, but really, there's a lot to fix to the game, and modeling is just not one of my strong suits. Programming all these systems, these gameplay systems, and balancing the game is mainly what I should be focusing on, but I do want more full environments. So once I get the really polished or things that need polish out of the way, I will start working on environments. So in this playthrough, I think, I don't remember exactly what happens in this one, but mainly this is just me going through. That rare's health bar didn't spawn, that's a small issue, which I'm not too sure about. What's causing that? It might have just been mispositioned. Sometimes items, like this item right here, they all have gravity, but for some reason, the gravity doesn't apply to them sometimes, and I'm looking to fix that one as well. UI is something I'll definitely work on, but it's such a frustrating issue to work on because, as you can see in the top right of the screen, you see how the diamonds are all spaced out and there's gaps between them? When I work on the game in the editor, those are all grouped together, and I set them up so that they'll group together. And even when I change the resolution in the editor from small, medium, large, like 1366 or 1920 or 2K or 4K, they stay together. But then when I build the game and play the game, they turn out different. So issues like that are really hard for me to track down. It's not that they're hard to track down, they're just time consuming, because when an issue is like that in the editor and it's like, oh, Viper, all you have to do is just realign these things. Oh, that's easy, right? But I do realign them, and then I build the game and I play the game, and the results are different than what they look like. So issues like that, well, they might seem easy on the surface to fix, are actually really annoying to fix. But then you might see more complex issues like, hey, this ability's not working at all, or I think you could even see it in Bakaria here. When her attacks ricochet, not all the beams are going out. You can see only one beam there came out. And that might seem like a more complicated issue, but that one's actually really simple. There's just not enough beams in the pool of beams that she uses to to show them all. And that's actually really simple. I just need to up the number of beams. So another thing that you could probably notice in this one is the lighting issues. You'll see when I pan the camera, there's like that lighting that sort of bleeds off things. And again, this is something that in the editor, it doesn't show up, but in the game, it shows up. So issues like that, when you hear me talk about them, those are like tricky, annoying ones to solve, because just touching things in the editor and then running them isn't enough. I need to test them, I need to build the game, and then I need to see the results. And then if something doesn't work, I need to go back, I need to tweak it, I need to build the game again, and then I need to try it out, see if the fix worked. Settings menu things are a lot like that too, like full screen, borderless. You just can't test those things unless you fully build the game, and whenever you make a change to them, you have to fully build the game again, which takes time, and it's just a very disruptive workflow when it comes to trying to fix things. Another thing I noticed about the game that's been pointed out to me was the game balance in general. I've tweaked it a bit since the initial launch of the demo, but it's still not quite where I like it. People were generally saying that at the start of the game, it's way too hard. Enemies sort of just kill you extremely fast, but then once you sort of reach a critical mass of items, enemies become trivial, they don't do much damage to you, and you kill them all very, very quick. This is a nice little segment of fighting these bunch of leapers, but mainly I was just looking for the teleporter. But yeah, but the good thing about balancing is really easy to test, because I can just literally set up automated testing where level 1 enemy does 60 damage, level 10 enemy does 200 damage, level 1 player has 600 health, so that'll be 1/10 of your health bar, and then a level 10 player has maybe 6,000. So the 200 is now coming out of 1,000. Is that okay? And that's really just a numbers game, and I can tweak those on the fly, I can tweak them as needed, and testing those is actually very easy. Because like I said, I can just arbitrarily set the level of enemies in the player and say, does this damage feel good? Is this fair for this level? If yes, then I keep it. If not, then no. The main issue here is figuring out where the pain points are. So, early on, it doesn't feel good to just get killed immediately. I like a challenge, but what I found when looking at the statistics was people were dying too quick, and then they weren't playing again. And so, that might just be a demo thing, but that's also something I could tailor with difficulties, and that's pretty easy to do. So, yeah, that's definitely something I'm working on. As you can see in this video, I made the game, so I know how the AI works, so I can dodge pretty much everything the enemies throw at me. So I'm not getting hit much, but you can see the damage is a little maybe too strong. Like, I'm just sort of killing things very easily. But my goal for the game, if you remember from my other devlogs, was to have a lot of enemies that you kill quickly, instead of a small amount of enemies that are very tanky and tough, and that, you know, take a while to kill. Because my main goal with that is, I've always liked, I always use the comparison Left 4 Dead versus COD Zombies. In COD Zombies, there's a decent amount of enemies, but really when it gets down to like the later game, there's a lot of tanky enemies, or there's tanky enemies, but then not a lot of them. But Left 4 Dead, there's hundreds of enemies, but you just rip through 20 of them with a single attack. I really like that, and that's the feeling I want to go for with the game. Also, you'll have to pardon the interruption. I was limit testing one of the abilities, which is another bug that I will have to come back and fix. Bakaria's beam bounce just crashes the game. The reason it does that is because when you shoot into one of those prisms, it splits 10 times and it redirects it at the other prism. And then for each one of those that hits the other prism, it again splits 10 times and bounces. And if you do too many of those too fast, if you've ever wondered why ray tracing in games is a very costly process, that's literally what ray tracing does. It emits light to a certain area, it bounces the light in 10 different directions, then that hits another area to bounce again to light a new area 10 times, and that's just how it is. So, that's one I aim to fix. I might rework that ability to try to find something that is more fun to play with, or that's, you can play with her bounce mechanic a bit more, but it won't crash people's games. So, for this one, I forgot what I was doing at this point in the video. I think I was changing something outside the game. But in here, jumping back into balance, I was mainly trying to test out the initial balance, and you'll see that the initial enemies maybe are a little too strong. So my main goal here was to try to surround myself with enemies, let them swarm me, and see how much I could deal with it. Because Surge doesn't have as many defensive options as Vicaria. She has her shift and her dodge. The dodge is on a very low cooldown. Surge's is on a bit longer of a cooldown, but I wanted to see, what the balance is like. Because in my ideal version of the game, one cast of an ability kills a basic enemy. So these flyers, they should be killed as long as the character is using their passive ability. So in Surge's case, his speed. If his speed is high, I should be killing enemies with a single cast of an ability. And I think I've hit that in terms of health of the enemies. But now the real question is, these characters like Surge can move around, as you saw. He can wall jump, glide around. As long as you learn the enemy patterns, you could dodge pretty much everything. And that also plays into the balance of why I want to put so many enemies around the player, is because you can dodge those lobbing projectiles. Imagine if there was only 4 of those leaper enemies. You could dodge them all very easily by just strafing in a circle a couple times. But when you can move like Surge can, look at this. I could fly around the map. You need a lot of enemies in order to really challenge the player. But if I don't make the enemies individually kind of strong, then sure, you're going to get hit, but like you just saw, you're not going to get hit for a lot when you do. So I'm really trying to not put a lot of health regen and lifesteal type items, even though I love the archetype of a lifesteal character where you could just stand still, but you hit everything so much that you just regen your full life bar. I like that, and I will design a character whose theme's probably going to be blood themed. That's the typical game dev vampirism. You spend blood as a resource, but then you gain blood from enemies you hit. I like that archetype. I know it's a bit stereotypical, but I will make a lifesteal character that fits that. But for now, I want each hit you take to feel meaningful, but not do too much damage. So you could see there, I ran in, I got hit 5-6 times. My character's level 3, the enemies are level 3. That's pretty good. I think I've hit the balance a little better, a little closer to what I've liked. But I think an issue you might see in this one is performance, and that's something I'm very conscious of, very aware of. I think at this point, since my health is regenning very slowly, and I'm pretty much 1 or 2 hits from death, I'm playing very safe, trying to get XP to level up so I can full heal. But performance, right. So performance is definitely something I'm conscious of, and definitely something I've tried to bake into all aspects of the game. But it's a fault of the design that I've wanted to do. So, like I said, my design is I want hundreds of enemies that you can kill large hordes of in a single attack. I want you to cast 1 attack and kill 10 enemies in front of you that are nice and clumped up. The problem then becomes, well, now I've got to render 100 enemies. I've got to do AI and spell effects. I need to make each enemy needs to feel cool or look good in its own right, but it also needs to be performant. And so you might notice as this video goes on, my FPS just slowly gets lower and lower and lower. And the reason for that is, okay, I just got one shot by the boss. So maybe my balance on the boss scaling needs help. But, so my reasoning, or the reason for that is, you know, pretty obvious. I've worked very hard to optimize the effects. You know, that's one of the very first things I looked into and made was a system that allows you to cast hundreds of abilities with very low impact on your performance. But the vector I haven't delved into with that is graphical performance and the AI. So the AI for each character is running every frame. Every AI is running. And I have a way to solve it, I just haven't implemented it. The way I'm going to do it is, instead of every AI running their own, I'm going to have a manager that tells the AI when to run. And then based on how far the AI is from the player, I'll decide to run the AI or not, basically. Because there are enemies right now that in this scene that are across the map from me. They may eventually get to me with the AI pathfinding, but they might not. And I don't know if people probably don't remember, but something I wanted for the game is when you're entering a stage in this game, you're entering their domain. You are getting close. This is their home that they're defending essentially from you. So it should, having enemies spawn around you and then converge on you, I don't like. I more like the idea of the area just being filled with enemies and they don't really try to move to you unless you're threatening them. Like, they are just there to be in their area, but when you get close to them, now they're gonna attack you. They're gonna try to kill you. And so, by not doing that, by not running large updates for all the enemies across the map, that'll cut down the CPU performance significantly. And right now, the game is pretty CPU bound. All the enemies, like you can tell, they are textured. They do use a specific shader that I wrote for the game. But in general, they're not very, you know, they're not very high poly. The shaders on them are kind of basic. It's just like a, you know, a Fresnel effect. Well, people, unless you're a game dev, you probably don't know what that means, but they're pretty basic shaders. So the game, I don't believe, is GPU bound. I'd say it's CPU bound, meaning all the things like AI, collisions, physics, all the things running on that end, those are the big time sinks and the big performance impacts. So I've identified them, I just need to put the time into fixing them. Another bug that I'll point out, if you can tell, is when the flame here is attacking, the projectiles were not being spread as they're supposed to. One projectile was going up, one was going through the middle, but she was supposed to be casting 3 of them. That, again, I believe is a problem very similar to Bakaria's issue, where she's supposed to be she's pulling from a pool of resources, and there's just not enough in the pool of resources. So it just doesn't work effectively. So right there, I just quit out because I noticed the glitching issue and I wanted to fix it. And I restarted a new run. I think I don't do it with her again, Inferna. Oh no, I do. Okay. But yeah, there's a bunch more issues. Every character, I think, has a few issues. Flo, for example, his audio isn't affected by the sound effects volume, so Flo's spears are extremely loud. I apologize for that, but I believe I fixed that one. The UI is something that I definitely need to work on, and it's just, again, like modeling, it's not my forte, but I do want to make it look as good as I can in like a way that is doable for me. Like, do not expect like a AAA game tier UI, but expect something that at least functionally works, is easy to use, and it may not be the prettiest, but it'll do what you want it to. And that's really what I'm out there for. Like, yeah, could I make it look better? I could. But the amount of effort I'd have to put into that is effort I'm not putting into making a new character, polishing other bug fixes, stuff like that, and it really is just a matter of what I want to dedicate my time to. And yeah, environments like this one, if you compare this to the flame stage, it's kind of empty when there's no enemies around, and there really should be things around to interact with. Like, you're ideally looking for chests, you're trying to kill enemies and clear out the area. The lighting, I think, works pretty decent in this area. It needs a little bit of work, but there should be more things on the ground, on the walls, on the ceilings, more interesting points of interest rather than the broken structures that you see. While I do like them and they are grand, I do need smaller stuff to scatter around. Ideally, before early access, I'd like 4 fully fleshed out environments, possibly 5. I think 4 is okay, but I'd like to do 5, if I can. The 5th one might be a very basic one, kind of like the status this one is now, but with a whole different tile set that is visually interesting, has really cool terrain, and is fun to play around. That's the most important part, I think. Like, I can make a bunch of different environments if I want to. What I really want to do, though, is make environments that are fun to play in for different characters. So, this pillar stage I really made for Flo. He has the 2 grapple hooks, he can swing around. If you're good with the grapple hooks, this should be your favorite level, because you can just swing around, have a great time weaving in and out of the terrain. It's also good for Surge, for similar reasons. But for other characters, maybe not so much. So I want to find stages that are good for certain characters. Some are just good on every stage, and some are good, again, like Flo, specific to this stage. So, yeah, I think I've talked a bit about most of the pressing issues with the game. The sound, for example, is a really easy one to point out here, because I'm attacking so fast, and the priority of the hit effects is overwhelming the cast effects. So you don't hear me casting, you don't hear the boss's spells, because the hit effects are higher priority. That stuff's just number tweaks, but again, something I'm aware of and something I am intending to fix. It's just, I have to prioritize, and that one should be a high priority because it's a very high polish facing issue. But yeah, I'm working on it. I'm aware of it. And the last thing I need to work on is multiplayer. Multiplayer, I've always intended, I've built the game for multiplayer, but it's just going to take some time. And it's probably going to be the last thing I work on before I release early access. I really do want to get it in for early access. I might not be able to, but I would love to get it in for an early access version of the game. I want you to just be able to have another friend with you, clear out an area like this, and just have fun playing together. Maybe you could create some synergies with your abilities, like Umbra can spin, pull all the enemies in, and you can play Inferna and stack your overlapping AoEs on her secondary attack, and then just, boom, blow up a huge area. Or blow up a huge amount of enemies. And that's the goal. It's supposed to be fun. The multiplayer is going to be pretty primitive. It's going to be pretty client authoritative. So whoever hosts the server is going to basically they are the server. So whatever their client says goes. So you might notice some glitching. There will definitely be bugs to fix, but I just want it in there. I want you to be able to invite a friend and play. That's the main goal. And we're getting there. So to wrap things up, I think getting to the end of this gameplay that I've recorded here. Lastly, there's a 7th character I'm working on, and for this one I kind of want to do a different approach. I'd like her to have a mostly community-driven design. I have some ideas for what I want her to be like for now, but I've received good feedback from players on, you know, I like this character, what if this character could do this? So on this one, I'm really curious what people think of this character and what they could want of her. So Athena is the air archer who bends air to her will, enchanting her arrows for powerful effects. I'd love to play around with tons of cool abilities, but I'm curious what you guys might think that hasn't already been done by another character. So every character doesn't necessarily need a niche, but she shouldn't come in and just be a better version of an existing character. Um, you know, when you think of abilities for her, you always got to start with her passive ability. So I was thinking of something like, say, Yasuo's Wind Wall, where one of her abilities is just a deflecting area around her. And then whenever an enemy attacks it, she absorbs it, and then does more damage and has more speed based on how many times she's absorbed things. This would be really cool, but it would require a lot of micromanaging. It would slowly fade off, and what if there's no projectile enemies around you? I guess that's kind of the trade-off. I can make it give a significant boost to damage and speed, but it would also need to be fair. Yeah, so I think this would be really cool. And then I could also design all her other abilities that also help her generate more charge. So wrapping things up, I know it does sound like a lot, but again, the fact that I'm aware of these things, I think should give you some hope that I'll be fixing all the jankiness and bugs. And I'm still working hard on that. I appreciate all the feedback I received, and more importantly, you for watching this video. It really does mean a lot to me, so thank you for your interest and supporting the development of this game. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.